Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In the last video, I started talking about making games that use text input instead of links. Links are the default way that Twine works. You the player, click on one of a choice of a set of links, and that's how you indicate which choice you want to make. But you can also make games where you have a text box like this one, and you as the player will enter text indicating what you want to do, like go north, or get the lamp if there's a lamp, etc, etc. In this video I want to continue talking about those sort of games, and I want to talk about movement. So we can see here that we have a little description of where we, the player character, are. You are in the southwest corner of the mansion, and you can also see that there are exits. It says exits north and east, so it's telling us that we can go north and east, but we can't go west and south. Most of these games rely on the four cardinal directions. So for example, we can see that if we say go west, we will get an error message. You can't go that way, and it just gives us the description again and the exits again. If we go north, we will now see that we are in the northwest corner of the mansion, and now we can see that the exits go east and south. And we can continue to move around, and in each case, if we try to go in a direction that isn't one of the ones we want, we just get an error message, and we'll find that it's consistent. If we go west again, we'll end up back in the southwest corner of the mansion. If we go east, we'll be in the southeast corner, and so on. So let's have a look at how to program a system like that. So I'll just X out of that and get into Twine. Now, I have to apologise for something that I did. Oops, I've made that a bit wide, sorry. There we go. I have to apologise for something that I did in the previous video. I kept referring to the commands as verbs. I had an array and it was called $V for verbs, and I had all the basic commands: northeast, southwest, inventory, attack, fight, etc, etc. And I kept calling them verbs, and I realised after I'd made the video and uploaded it that not all of them are verbs. A verb is a word that describes an action. So attack and fight and talk and look are all verbs, but north, east, south and west are not verbs. I should know that because I majored in English when I went to university, so I don't have any excuse for that. I was just wrong, so I'm sorry about that. So I've renamed what was $V, I've renamed it $C for commands. It's just an array with all of the basic types of commands. And I've added a couple of variables that are needed for moving around. One is $L, and that is set to 1 at the beginning of the video, beginning of the program, sorry, and it is the player character's location. You start in location 1. And then we have this significantly more complicated variable $P for place, and it is a two-dimensional array where each number gives details about a particular location. So let's look at $P1. You'll see that first of all we have you're in the southwest corner of the mansion. Well, that's the brief description that the player will get if they are in that place, as they will be when they start. And then we have some numbers. We have 2, 4, 0, 0. And what those indicate is whether you can go in a particular direction from there, and if so, where you end up. And it's in the same order as it is in the C array, that is north, east, south and west. So 2, 4, 0, 0 means if you go north from location 1, you'll end up in location 2. If you go east, you'll end up in location 4. If you try to go south, you'll get an error message because that has a 0. And if you try to go west, you'll get an error message because that is a 0. And similarly, we have information about the other locations that I've set up. Now, you may realise that is a bit of a redundant way to set things up, because it means that everything has to be, or all of the connections have to be described twice. So for example, in location 1, it tells you, oh, we can go north to location 2, but in location 2, it tells you you can go south to location 1. And that's basically the same information. Yeah, there might be one-way movement in very specific circumstances or something, but basically if you can go north from A and end up at B, well, that's really the same thing as telling you you can go south from B and end up at A, isn't it? So why have I got every bit of information twice? Why don't I just, for example, just say what happens when you go north and east, and then if we want to go south and west, look in the others to see if any of them lead to number 1? Well, the answer is that would make the programming more complicated and a bit more difficult to explain. And I decided it was better to have sort of redundant information in this array rather than make the programming more complex. So let's look at the input screen. The first thing it does is print $P $L0. Well, that's just this. That's just the brief description. So all that's doing is it's saying print the little description, and then print a couple of carriage returns so that we have a spare line. Then it prints exits. Then it has a for loop, which goes from values 1 to 4 for the variable z, and it looks at $P square bracket $L end square bracket $Z end square bracket. In other words, it looks at these numbers. It looks at all 4 of these numbers in order. And if that number is over 0, in other words, if the array is telling the computer that you can leave in that particular direction from this particular place, then print $C square bracket $Z end square bracket. In other words, print the relevant one of these, north, east, south, or west. And that's why I've got these numbers in the same order as the directions are listed in the C array, and it's also why I've got north, east, south, and west as the first four commands. So in other words, go through all of the 4 cardinal directions, and if there's an exit in that direction, print the name of that direction to let the player know they can go that way. And then we have what do you want to do, and a text box. I won't go into this in detail because I did that in the previous video, but I will say that I changed, in the previous video I had the text that the player enters as $action, and I've just changed it to $X to be a bit more consistent. And then we go to the page process action. So let's have a look at process action. Now, I did make I have already told you about all this stuff. This was in the previous video. I will say that I've made one difference, which is it was working with strings. So what this is doing is it's going through C, it's going through this list of commands, and if that particular command is present in the text that the player has entered, then it's setting this variable y equal to the number of the command. Now, previously, it was setting it to the actual name of the command. So if you entered north, it would end up setting the variable y to the string NORTH. Now, if you entered north, it would end up setting y to number 1, because north has the number 1 slot in the array C. So, in short, you end up with a number, and now this bit is new. This is the bit where we process the commands and we send the program off to the relevant. There'll be lots of sort of new pages here dealing with particular different types of commands, but at the moment we've only got 3. We've got if y is equal to 0, well, that'll be the case if it doesn't find the name of any command. So it starts as 0, but y is changed in this for loop if it notices the any of the listed commands in the string that you've put in. But let's say y is 0. Well, that means you haven't entered anything that it recognises, and it'll just say, I don't know how to do that, and then it'll take you back to input to enter it again. So you get that error message. Else, if y is under 5, in other words, if y is 1, 2, 3, or 4, which is equal to, or which equates to north and the other directions, then we include move. Else, so that means y is 5 or more. Well, at the moment, it just says I haven't programmed that yet and takes you back to input. But obviously, as we go through this series, I'll be adding more and more possibilities here and more different pages to deal with the different actions. But at the moment, the only one we've got is move. So let's have a look at what move does. Well, we're dealing with y, which is the number. So it'll be 1 if the player has entered north, 2 if the player has entered east, 3 for south, and 4 for west. So we look at $p, square bracket, $L, end square bracket, $y, end square bracket. So $p is the array with the descriptions and the directions. $L is the current location, and $y is the number of the direction that the player wants to go. So if that number is over 0, so let's say, for example, we're in location 3 and the player wants to go south. Well, if the player wants to go south, we know that y will be 3. So we would look at that, and we would see that it is over 0, and we would see that going south is indicated to lead to location 4. So it will set L equal to $p, $L, $y. So in that particular case, it would set L equal to 4 because the array says if you try to go south from location 3, then the player will go to location 4. Or we might get that p, $L, $y is equal to 0. Well, in that case, we don't set the location equal to 0. We just give them a message saying you can't go that way. And either way, we've either changed the player's location or we've told them that they can't go that way. There's no connection. And then we go back to input. And at input, we will print the description of the new place. This will now be different because L will be different. And then we print the exits, and those exits will be different, or may be different, because the location is different. And then we ask them what they want to do from there. So that is how you do basic movement. Now, there may be, and in fact there probably will be, some wrinkles to this. For example, and this is a very common one in games of this type, you might have a locked door, and that locked door means that you can go in a particular direction if you have a key, and if you don't have the key, then you can't. So instead of always giving the same message, it would ask, well, does the player have this particular item? And then it would say, yep, you unlock the door and you go and it changes your location. Or it will say, no, you try the door, but it's locked and it doesn't seem to be big enough to break. It doesn't seem like you can break it down, or whatever it may be. You may have a location that is a lake, and you can only go into the deep part of the lake if you have a boat, for example. In fact, a lot of the puzzles of the game involve kind of getting the right items to enable access to particular particular areas. Perhaps if it was a fantasy story, perhaps there's a statue that will only let you pass if you guess its riddle or defeat it in combat, or whatever, right? But what we've dealt with here is sort of the basic movement, normal sort of movement, and those kind of fancier or more complicated ways of doing it we'll deal with when we come to items and characters. which will be in videos to come. So I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.